Welcome to the BDGG guide for Mythic Sludgefist, presented by Wowhead. Sludgefist is the 8th boss in the instance, and while it's largely considered a gear check, there's a real mechanic check as well. There are two major Mythic changes on this fight. The first is that Destructive Stomp triggers a 4-yard AoE around each player for 16k physical damage. This means that while players are linked, they must spread from one another as well as incoming melee, by a minimum of 4 yards, or they risk cleaving and dying. The second change is that destroying a pillar creates 4 large fractured boulders that must be soaked. Each one of these then bounces to 2 additional small soaks. You must do this while chained, and failing to soak any boulder will result in an automatic wipe. For raid composition on this fight, you should go with 5 healers, 2 tanks, and 13 DPS, with a very limited number of melee. Holy Paladins and Mistweaver Monks count as melee, and you should run an even number of melee. We ran 1 Arms Warrior and 1 Holy Paladin on our kill, but you could have up to 4 melee. We don't recommend having 6 if you can help it, and you have other viable ranged DPS instead. The boss positioning on this fight is mostly unchanged from Heroic, but you have to be very economic with your space. The boss should be moved very slowly around the outside of the room so that melee and tanks drop Stonequakes against the edge of the room, and range should also attempt to drop Stonequakes against the outside as well as behind their pathing. The fight starts with the first applications of chains on all players. We designate players as Alpha or Beta for 2 reasons. We want one player really directing where the pair of players move, and we also use that assignment to determine who soaks which boulders on pillar breaks. When possible, we prioritize healers as Alpha. You'll see on this first Destructive Stomp that each player gets a 4-yard circle around each of them. At the end of this Destructive Stomp, those circles are rubbed for 16k physical damage and will likely kill you if you get hit by more than one. Each Destructive Stomp also triggers Stonequakes to fall from the ceiling. If possible, you should try and bait these near the wall or on top of other ones. If you are ahead of the clockwise path in the room, then you limit the amount of room the raid has for the rest of the fight. This will repeat once more before the first destructive charge takes place, and this is where you should save your cooldowns. The tanks will pull the boss into position for maximum uptime, and DPS will start to pop cooldowns to line up for the moment he hits the pillar. A great DPS phase will result in the boss being sub 75% before he casts Colossal Roar. The tanks will then move the boss to the next section of the room here, and range should continue to bait Stonequakes near existing ones and away from the middle of the room if possible. Some classes, like Hunter, tend to be better on pull and then rolling cooldowns, but other classes, such as Boomkins, should use their cooldowns on pillars. Each of these in-between phases is identical otherwise. You'll have Chain Slams, which will need to be assigned for soaking, Destructive Stomps, and Colossal Roars. The second pillar phase here, you should aim to get the boss to sub 58%. The Colossal Roars that happens from this point forward in the fight can push you into falling Stonequakes, and getting hit will likely kill you, so you'll have to start paying close attention to what is behind you for each roar. Static raid damage increases throughout the fight, so with stomps you'll have to start being extra clean with any splash damage. Healing cooldowns should be primarily planned around the pillar smashes. For this next destructive impact, you'll aim for the boss to be sub 50%, so we can see that we're ahead of damage at this point. This pillar we assigned health stones to, as we wanted to have the tail end of the fight have the longer healing cooldowns available. In that same vein, we use Lust here to allow us to push healing cooldowns a little further. We use Lust about 25 seconds before the next destructive impact, and this allows healers to stay ahead on raid damage so that we're still topped off before the impact, but it also ensures that this Lust lasts through the final pillar and we get all the damage we can. Even with a healer Lust here, you can see that the healing check starts to get very sketchy. You'll want to end the final pillar sub 15% ideally, and you'll want to save healer DRs here, at least a Spirit Link and a Barrier. You'll stack the ranged and healers up in a safe spot to survive as long as possible as you try and finish out the final percents of the boss. If done correctly, you can live for another 5 to 10 seconds. If you have any questions, leave a comment down below. Be sure to subscribe and like the video to be notified of the rest of our Castle Nathria guides. Good luck!